Welcome back. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with political commentator Benedict Spence and journalist and author Christina Patterson. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, The Observer leads with an extensive interview with Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, in which he expresses regrets for the way he's handled a number of recent problems. The Times has been speaking to him as well, and he tells the paper that he was too distracted by other issues to deal with the crisis over welfare when he should have. And after all the political machinations and U-turns in recent weeks, The Express quotes Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, who says the country is crying out for politicians with real principles. The Telegraph has news that supermarkets are to be ordered to cut up to 100 calories from the average shopping basket to boost the nation's health, but that critics have branded it the action of a nanny state. The Mirror too has that story, including an interview with the man behind the plan, Health Secretary Wes Streeting. The Sun claims an exclusive with a report that Wayne Couzens, the police officer who kidnapped, raped and murdered Sarah Everard in 2021, has been allowed to have back surgery paid for by the NHS. One MP describes it as an appalling waste of public money. Meanwhile, the Sunday People speaks to an ex-teacher who groomed and abducted a pupil about his efforts to get himself removed from the sex offenders register. The Mail leads with angry calls for the arrest of a pro-Palestinian punk band performing at Glastonbury after one of their songs called for the killing of IDF soldiers. And finally, The Star tells us that a scientist thinks he may have spotted a werewolf in, of all places, the seaside town of Bridlington in Yorkshire. No, we're not looking at that story. We're joined tonight by Benedict Spence and Christina Patterson to take us through the newspapers. Good to see you both. Let's start with The Observer front page and this interview that the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has given, in which he said regrets. He's had a few, although I don't believe he broke into song.
I don't think anyone in the Labour Party is in the mood for breaking into song at the moment, actually. It's a very interesting interview. Tom Baldwin, of course, wrote a biography of Sir Keir Starmer, which is, by huge coincidence, just coming out in paperback, hence the interview in The Observer. And Keir Starmer obviously trusts him. I think they are pretty much friends, or if not friends, then they have a very good relationship. And I think Keir Starmer had thought very carefully about what he was going to say to Tom Baldwin. And I was quite, I mean, sadly, I don't think anybody thinks he's doing a brilliant job at the moment. I think he's done well on the world stage, and he's had extremely difficult challenges to deal with there, not only with Trump, of course, but with the NATO and the defence spending and Israel and Iran and all of these things. It's more than enough for anybody's in tray. So I think probably if we're going to be charitable, we should give him a little bit of leeway. But he very much wanted to express his regret for that country of strangers phrase that was used in that speech about immigration a few months ago, which went down extremely badly with most people, actually. And he says that neither he nor the speech writers were aware of the echoes of the Enoch Powell Rivers of Blood speech. I find that quite, I don't think he's lying about that, but I find it quite hard because it was such an incredibly important speech in the history of the 20th century and in relation to immigration in this country. So it's a bit shocking, I think, if they didn't realise that, but at least he has had the grace now to say he regrets it. And it's actually a rather kind of subdued and thoughtful interview when he talks about a number of regrets he has. And I think I do feel sorry for him. I think it's a very, very tough job. There's a clear failure that he hasn't, to use the kind of cliche, told a convincing story about what Labour wants to do. And there have been all these U-turns, winter fuel, now the welfare bill, all kinds of things. But it is a very, very difficult job. And I think he's genuinely very thoughtful about it and wanting to do better in the future. And frankly, let's hope he does.
Benedict, are you surprised by the honesty?
he sort of doesn't really have anything else to turn to. I think the problem he had is, even though he won a huge majority, they were under, the Labour Party were under no illusions that they were massively loved and that there was the same sort of enthusiasm that there was for previous incoming Labour governments. It's simply that they weren't the Conservatives. And I think a lot of patience from the general public, whilst it was there for a new party to come in and try and change things, was a lot thinner than perhaps they would have liked it to have been. And I think the whole effort that you can make justifiably of going, well, this happened on the Tories' watch and that happened on the Tories' watch, I think for a long time, actually, over the last year, people went, yeah, no, that's fair enough. But when they're sort of sitting back and looking at the way in which the government is now U-turning on certain things, on its own policies, sort of only a year into its tenure, then people are sat there going, well, hang on, this is actually incredibly weak. Your backbenchers don't even know what your agenda is. You don't seem to know what it is. How you said it was going to cost X, Y, Z amount of money, and now you're saying, oh, don't worry, we can find money for other things.
So you don't ever think that it's perceived as a strength, that it's a government that's listening?
No. I mean, Kemi Badenoch is being surprisingly honest as leader of the opposition, and how is she doing in the polls? You know, she is taking an absolute pasting. Actually, this is a problem in our politics. We hate politicians who lie to us, and we hate those who are truthful even more. There is a lot of anger, let's just say. But this is, he doesn't have many other avenues to explore. Because he's inherited a very difficult situation, he has not made it any better. He has been sort of hit with all sorts of pelters from left, right and centre. This is an attempt, I think, in many ways to sort of softly try and reset everything a year in. But I think, you know, you highlighting the Island of Strangers comment, it just sort of underlines the fact that they don't really know how it is that they're supposed to approach any of these. You can take it from the economic perspective, or the fact that migration is back at the top of the agenda as the most important thing. I genuinely think they thought at the time, I don't think actually that they're being honest and saying, well, we didn't realise. I think they just don't quite know how to approach something like Farage or Reform, which is a party not based on strong ideology, but just pure apathy, pure people just being fed up with all of the above. They finally don't just have, you know, the option to spoil their vote. They have a political party to vote for, and they don't know how to respond to that.
Christina, you mentioned his, I don't know if you called it an excuse, but the fact that he was very preoccupied with international events. I mean, do you accept that as a reason that perhaps he wasn't behind what was going on with his own MPs with the welfare bill?
I think it's a combination, actually. I mean, he certainly has been preoccupied with international affairs. And I mean, frankly, dealing with Trump's moods and turbulence is a pretty full-time job for anyone. And I think, I mean, it's mortifying to watch. It's mortifying. I mean, it's like Mark Rutte's comment about daddy and so on. It's absolutely mortifying. But because we are so...
Benedict's giggling at me.
What a moment that was.
It's just, the whole thing is excruciating. But alas, and of course, you know, many of us would in many ways prefer that they just said, look, for goodness sake, this is ridiculous, we're not going to humour you. But we can't. You know, we're all too entangled with the US to take that. So everybody has to pussyfoot around him and pretend that he's, you know, the big strong guy. And actually, to be fair to Trump, and obviously anyone watching this will be surprised by me saying this, I have to say that this week on the Israel and Iran situation, Trump surprised me. And maybe this truce will kind of last a bit. I do think Iran will be more determined to make a bomb than ever. So in the long term, I don't think it will necessarily help us. But even Trump has moments of humanity. But anyway, that's distracting us from the point of Starmer. I think he probably is very caught up in this. But I do also think very sadly, a lot of this is to do with his buttoned-upness. I mean, on the welfare reform bill, which they got so badly wrong, he had a disabled brother who died in, I think it was December 2024. And his mother was severely disabled. He knows what it's like to live with disability. I'm sure he really does care about this. But he hasn't been able to, or he has chosen not to convey any of that. And for whatever reasons, and he's a very busy man, he's not engaging with MPs. Again, he made an unfortunate comment this week about noises off, which made MPs feel dismissed. It made me think of Margaret Thatcher's vegetables comment about the cabinet at the time. I think tonally, I'm sure he is a decent man trying to do his best. He is, unfortunately, very bad at tone. And I think of David Cameron, who I didn't like or respect, but he was excellent on tone.
OK, let's have a look at the Mirror, just bring back to domestic politics, and this is Wes Streeting's 10-year plan for the NHS, and one of those is to get supermarkets to cut the calories in what's in our shopping basket.
Yes, this is a slightly confused story because it's on the front pages of a couple of papers and they have differing figures. So in the Mirror it says they're going to try to get people's calorie intake down by 216 calories. I assume that means a day. If it's a week, then that's barely worth writing about.
Yes.
The Times says it's only going to be 100 calories. Which, even if that is a day, is actually barely worth writing about either. But this is all about trying to get people's obesity levels down. It's not entirely clear what the strategy is. It appears to be that there are going to be penalties for supermarkets and that supermarkets are going to have to monitor what it is people buy, and they're going to have to give that data to the government. I'm not quite sure what it is that supermarkets are being empowered to do, to say to people, now, listen here, you're going to put the Yorkie bar back and you're going to take this nice bowl of fruit. Yeah, is that actually what's going to happen? I suspect probably not, but who knows?
But apparently that they're going to be fined if they don't oversee this.
Yeah.
How's that going to work?
Exactly. So what I suppose what they'd be saying is, well, it's up to you to maybe, I don't know, position healthier foods at the front and maybe, I don't know, hide the sweets and the treats. But I don't really think that's going to work. If you're somebody who has sort of chronic overeating problems, I don't actually think you're going to be put off by that. If actually you're heading into a store and you're thinking, I want sugar and that's what I'm going to get, I think you're going to be pretty determined to get it. And if it's people who are slightly, overeating because they've had a long day at work and so they want to get a ready meal, are they actually going to stop and go, oh, I'm not going to get the ready meal, I'm going to cook a full three-course dinner because that's what the state tells me is good for me? It's a nice idea. Obesity is high, need to get it down. I'm just not sure that blaming the supermarkets and saying, you figure this out, is the right way to go about it.
It's going to be difficult to enforce, isn't it, Christine?
It is going to be difficult to enforce, but they've got to try something, haven't they? And I think the thing is that the Tory approach has always been, we mustn't be nanny state, people should be able to choose to eat what they like. But it's not really choice, More people in deprived communities are much, much more likely to be obese than people in middle class and prosperous communities. And that's not because they are irresponsible, it's because processed food is much cheaper. So I think there is something to be, I think it's worth a try. It was proposed by Nesta, apparently, which is the National Endowment for the Society of Technology and the Arts, which explores innovative approaches to things. And it's obviously been investigated to some degree enough to be tried out here. And I think the point here, perhaps the admirable point, is that the supermarkets have been given autonomy over how they approach it, and perhaps they will come up with creative solutions. It may be that all they can do is tweak the content of the ready meals so that they do have 100 less calories, and that would be better than nothing.
Or they could just make the ready meals much, much more expensive.
Well, that wouldn't really solve the problem, because the likelihood is, I'm a bit of a fan of Charlie Bigham ready meals, I have to say. But if you're living on benefits, you're not going to be able to afford a Charlie Bigham fish pie or chicken tikka masala. So
I think other ready meals that are available.
There are.
Speaking as a person who enjoys food, I will find a way around this. That's all that I think needs to be said. And there are many others like me who are just constantly devouring all the time.
Benedict and Christina, thank you very much for the moment. We just want to bring you some breaking news now, some sporting news. And England have won the Under-21 European Championship. The Young Lions beat Germany 3-2 after extra time to retain the title they won 2 years ago. England had taken a 2-0 lead before letting the Germans back into the game. But substitute Jonathan Rowe scored with his very first touch to win the tournament. Congratulations to them. It's nice to win, isn't it? Coming up, Nigel Farage warns, beware who follows me, as he lays out his plan to restore faith in government. Stay with us for more.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagir, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Do you fear a fourth indictment? Does your government owe an apology to the British home children?
Great to see you.
Does your government owe them an apology? The fact that they were intercepted, does that indicate a military weakness on the part of Iran?
No.
Free, wherever you get your news. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. You can feel a devastating power. It had been a difficult night in a deadly storm.
Bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
It's depressing.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
The white gold rush is a race that Biden doesn't want to lose. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, it would appear is about to learn his fate.
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block.
James Matthews, Sky News. I want them to be treated equally like everyone else.
It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
You're diminished by claims that you're a racist.
The question?
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets. Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, political commentator Benedict Spence and journalist and author Christina Patterson. So let's take a look at the Times, Sunday Times front page in this section, and the story at the bottom of the paper. Nigel Farage is saying that we should be aware who follows him. This is an interview that he's done for the newspaper, and he's saying that he believes he's the only man standing between Britain and dangerous anti-democratic forces. Benedict.
I'm fascinated to read this interview because it touches on lots of very interesting themes. The first being that he's talking about wanting to make Britain a more democratic country, that partly what he fears will be anti-democratic forces that will come down the line. And he talks in this interview about how he's going to bring more experts in from outside politics, but make them more accountable. But as well as that aspect of be careful about what might follow, he also talks about, I think, political movements that might follow him. And I think we all understand what's sort of meant by that, towards the extremes. I mean, the Times picks up on the fact that, for instance, whilst he's disavowed people like Tommy Robinson, he's been reasonably positive towards people like Andrew Tate. And talking about...
But he denies being in his camp, but he says he can understand why he's popular.
Yeah, he understands why he's popular. And it's that aspect to it which I think is rather curious, because, of course, Andrew Tate represents something for lots of people that is perhaps anathema to a lot of the rest of us. But still, the phenomenon is there. You can't quite ignore it. You can't just hope that it goes away. The idea that this country will potentially go towards more political extremes is something that is beginning to concern a lot of people. And it's not simply saying the far right or the far left. You know, we've got 5 MPs sitting in the House of Commons who were elected on ostensibly pro-Gaza tickets. You know, that's politics, actually, that we've never seen before in this country. That's something the system isn't necessarily prepared for. So I think it is curious that he is perhaps starting to spin this as a line, much more sort of, don't look at me as the outsider or the dangerous candidate, but actually look to me as the person who can make sure that the system withstands what could come later. Because, you know, we have seen it elsewhere. In Italy, for example, you had Matteo Salvini, who everybody thought, this is a fascist candidate, a right-wing candidate. And then, lo and behold, somebody further to the right comes along and forms a government. You know, this is not incomprehensible that this could happen here as well.
And he's saying that he's a friend of President Trump and is, you know, very attracted to the way that they conduct business under his tenure.
Yeah. I mean, this, I have to say, for me, this was the first week when I thought it could be a serious possibility that Farage becomes Prime Minister, which, for me, that would be an absolute nadir in my lifetime. I think he is a first-class communicator. I think he is by far the best communicator in contemporary politics. And he does have something. I mean, I'm not surprised he's a friend of Trump's. And they do have something in common. Trump is probably the best political communicator in the world. Well, not probably, he is. He would not have achieved what he's achieved without that. And Farage has a similar gift, and it's something to do with charisma. It's not just celebrity. It's something to do with communicating in a way that somehow hits people in the gut. The trouble is that you can be a brilliant communicator, and there are significant examples from world history we could all mention at this point, but won't, because obviously they are, some of them, very controversial. But you can be a brilliant communicator and have awful ideas, or be a very, very bad politician. And it's not just Farage who would be Prime Minister. You know, obviously it would be a party which at the moment has minimal infrastructure, only 5 MPs, and would be in a poor position to run, you know, the proverbial party in the brewery. So yeah.
Let's just move on, just because we want to fit in this story, which has been a developing story tonight. And this is on the front page of the Mail, Benedict. And these are the acts at Glastonbury. Explain the story.
Well, sadly, I don't actually have the Mail because I came really prepared, but I do have the Telegraph, and it has the same story, so I apologise if there's any sort of discrepancy. I don't think it'll be, you know, sort of news to anybody now who has been plugged into what's been going on, and that is, of course, that there has been a lot of controversy at Glastonbury today. It was all supposed to be around the band Kneecap and what were they going to do and whether or not the BBC was going to broadcast their set and what they would say on the subject of Israel and Gaza and all of that. But, in fact, there have been other acts who have come out and said things that are, in many ways, worse. In fact, calling for violence, in fact, you know, inciting death towards Israeli soldiers. And whatever you might think about Israel's war in Gaza, you can't actually do that. You can't go on stage and incite violence like that.
Indeed.
So I suspect that's going to be something we hear about for the next couple of weeks.
Yes, the government have come out against that very strongly this evening. Benedict and Christian must leave it there. We've run out of time. Thank you very much for the moment. Let's take a look at the weather for you now.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, another heat wave is developing across the south, while the north will be cooler, cloudier and sometimes wetter. There'll be a mainly sunny, warm and dry start tomorrow, muggy in the south, but central parts will be rather grey with a little drizzle in places. Wales and central and southern Ireland will brighten through the morning, while Northern Ireland and East Anglia will see cloud and perhaps a little drizzle moving in. The far northwest can expect cloud and rain too, while Ireland may catch the odd shower.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.